Hi guys, today we're going to make some halloumi cheese. It's a very simple cheese. You don't need any mesophilic culture or anything like that. It's just a case of warming the milk up to 32 degrees Celsius and then adding our rennet. So it's a pretty simple process, and it's something that we can all do at home pretty easily. Now I'm using pasteurized but non-homogenized milk. It's a full cream milk. If you can't get that, you can add calcium chloride, a few drops, and you're good to go that way. But there it is. It's a non-homogenized full cream milk, and you've got to give them a good shake because the cream sticks to the sides, so you want to make sure you get all that cream out and into the milk. So now we're just going to stir that, and we're going to warm it up to 32 degrees Celsius. It doesn't take very long to get it to 32. It's not very warm at all, but that's the temperature our culture likes. Okay, so there you go. We've got it up to 32 degrees. So now we're going to add our rennet. Now we're going to dilute that in about a quarter cup of non-chlorinated water. So we put that in there and mix it in really well. There's the rennet there. Now you want to put it into lukewarm water when you start. Don't put it into cold water. I found that it takes a little bit longer if you do that. If you put it into lukewarm water and dilute it out, then tip it into the milk, and that needs a really good stir. You want to stir that for at least a minute, maybe two. And once that's stirred, we're going to move it over and put it into our warm water that we have in our sink, and that will keep it at the 32 degrees. So now we've stirred it, we're moving it over, putting the whole pot into the warm water in our sink. Now that water is at 32 degrees, and that will stay that way, believe it or not, for about an hour or so before I need to add any more water to it. I put the temperature gauge in there anyway. Now that needs to sit for 45 minutes so that the rennet can go off and the milk can cure. Now it's been sitting there for about 17 minutes, so it's about halfway. So we're just going to check the temperature to make sure that it hasn't dropped. And there it is, 32 degrees, close enough. So that's good. Pop him back on there, and we'll give him another 20 minutes. Okay, 20 minutes later. Now we're going to have a look at this curd. You just put your finger in it and break it up. If it splits easy like that, you can see that's ready. That means that the curd's cured all the way to the bottom of the pan, so all the milk has cured. So now we're just going to take a knife, because I don't have a curd cutter, and we're going to cut it into roughly an inch or so. And we've got to cut it in both directions. So you cut it down one way, and then of course cut it across. So we want cubes sort of thing, if you can make them, about an inch square to start with. And you cut it both ways. Now then you've got to cut it on a bit of a slant to actually cut the curd at the bottom, just like that. Just cut that along there, and that'll do the job fine. If you find you do have any big pieces of curd left, when you're stirring them up, you can just chop them up with your ladle. Pretty simple operation. So there we are, we've cut the curd up, and now we're going to let that rest so that the curds can heal, as they call it, for 5 minutes. Okay, 5 minutes later, the curds have healed up. So now what we're going to do is, over the next 10 minutes, increase the water temperature to 40 degrees Celsius while we stir. Yes, bitches, we've got to stand there and stir for 10 minutes. You can't get around this. You have to do this part. If you like to make cheese, then you're going to find out that you've got to do a lot of stirring. So for the next 10 minutes, we're going to slowly increase the water temperature up to 40 degrees and continually stir the curd. Now these curds are going to shrink quite a bit, probably down to about half of what they are now, and you'll see as the whey is expelled, the colour of the liquid there changes. Now any bigger pieces that are floating around, like I said, you just give them a chop and they're fine. Now as we're doing this, we're going to slowly bring the temperature up. So I've got it up to about 36 degrees, 37 degrees there. And over the next 10 minutes we'll continue to put a bit more hot water in that and bring it up to 40 degrees. Okay, we'll see you when that's done. Okay, now we've got about 3-4 minutes to go, and as you can see, the curds have shrunk quite a bit and there's much more whey and liquid in there. So we just give that the final go for the last few minutes, and then we're going to let that settle just for a minute. And there she's settled down. So now we're going to remove the pot from the water and let the water out, because we're now going to drain the whey from the curd. So for this I've got a colander and another pot and a cheesecloth. Now you've got to keep the whey because we need that for the next process in making the halloumi. You can also make ricotta from the whey as well, so there's no need to tip it down the drain. So we're going to just put the cheesecloth over there, and then we're going to tip the whey out. Now it's a pretty big pot, so I've got to do a bit of fiddling and shuffle a couple of pots around to get all of the whey out, but that's the idea. Now you just want to take this steady, just tip the bulk of the whey off. Now like I said, we want to keep this whey because we're actually going to boil this whey, or almost, up to 90 degrees, or a little bit higher, just below boiling. And we're going to reintroduce the halloumi cheese back into the whey, and that actually is what makes this cheese resistant to melting, so that you can fry it. So there's half of the whey in the one bowl, so I've just got to tip that one out and swap them over. I actually really like the smell of whey, really nice smell. Okay, so we'll spread that cheesecloth out again, and we'll pop him back in the bowl, spread the cheesecloth out, and we'll get the rest of the curd. So here we go. You just got to be careful, you don't want to waste it, splat it everywhere. It looks pretty much like scrambled eggs at the moment. It's pretty much the consistency of scrambled eggs as well. So now we want to let that drain, so we're going to give it a squeeze. We'll just wrap him up, squeeze some of that whey out. I've got to empty the bowl. As you can see, it runs out quite freely. Just give it a bit of a squeeze there. expel as much of those as you can, because you do re-need it. So there we go, the last bit of whey is out of the way. And we're just going to let that sit for 5 minutes, just to let it drain a little. So just wrap him up there and give him a bit of a squeeze out. We're just going to let that last bit of whey go down the sink. Now squeeze that out. There's quite a bit in there. Turn him up, make him nice and tight. And we're just going to sit that there for 5 minutes and let it drain. Pretty simple step. And once that's done, we're going to give it a bit of a press. Okay, give him 5 minutes and we'll give it a press. So 5 minutes later, it's drained pretty well, so we'll just get that colander out of the way, just dip that last bit down the sink. Now we want to move the cheesecloth around so that we make a bit of a square or an oblong out of it, but we want to keep it fairly tight so that it doesn't flatten completely out like a pancake. I like mine about an inch or so thick. So we just maneuver the cheesecloth around so that we capture that bundle, like I said, about an inch or so thick, and we want it to be nice and flat as well, so poke that underneath it there. So that's looking pretty good there at the moment. Now we're going to put a chopping board on the top of that and 4 kilos of weight. Now what I do is I use 4 litres of milk when I make it, so I just fill the milk containers up with water, and that gives you 4 kilos. Now we're going to put that weight on there and we're going to leave it for 10 minutes. So that'll squeeze a lot of that whey out and compress the cheese to make it firmer. So there we go, we give it 10 more minutes under that weight and we'll be back. Okay, 10 minutes later. Just remove the weight out of the way there. As you can see, it's flattened out pretty good on the top. Now we're just going to turn it over and repeat the process basically, just wiping some of that whey out of off the sink there. Now I'm just going to put the cheesecloth around the back of it again, just so that it'll now flatten out the top side of it. As you can see, it's already gone reasonably firm, but you do have to be careful. It's not 100% firm yet. So there we go, a nice little parcel. And we put the weight back on that. Now I put 6 kilos on this time. So 3 2-litre milk bottles on top of it like that, and that'll compress it nicely. Now we're going to leave it like that for about 25 minutes and then we'll come back. Okay, 25 minutes later. Now just remove the weights. Now this should have packed down nicely. Now you can see it's a nice little parcel there. It's about an inch thick, it's pretty close. You can make it thicker if you like. This is just how I prefer it. In the traditional recipe, you actually fold it over once you've salted it, but I don't bother with that because I put mine straight in a brine. So I don't even salt this, I just cook it back up and then let it cool and then put it straight in the brine. If you're going to keep it in the fridge in a container, then you could salt it and mint it if you wanted, like the traditional recipe. But I don't do that. I keep mine in a brine, and it's a full saturated salt brine, so just keep tipping salt in there until it won't dissolve into the water, and that's fully saturated, and your halloumi will keep in brine like that for like 6 months. It's unreal. So there's no great rush to eat it. So now I've just sliced it up into some nice little pieces there. As you can see, it's firmed up well. There's no big bubbles in there or anything. It's a little bit rough, of course, because it's homemade. I'm not really concerned about a perfect finish on the top. A few lines doesn't worry me. So now we've got the whey back up to 90 degrees. As you can see, it's just about to boil. So we're going to bring the halloumi over now and reintroduce it into this hot whey. Now this is actually what makes the halloumi friable as such. So we're heat treating it basically to 90 to 100 degrees Celsius. So you can cook it up to that and a little bit further and it won't run. It actually cooks really well. Now we're going to give that about 15 minutes. It depends on how thick your halloumi is. What you want to do is cook it until it floats. Once your halloumi is floating, then it's done. Simple as that. Okay, so 15 minutes later, and there she goes. So you want to keep the heat on to that, of course. So she's bubbling away. Now that's good. Now that's finished. I get that out, cool it down, and put it in my brine and into the fridge. Absolutely beautiful. It's as simple as that. Thanks for watching, guys.